And the Lord said, you shall multiply. And he didn't say who is. So it don't make any difference who we multiply with. I don't believe. Boy, I'm gonna fill his word. I'm gonna multiply.
Lloyd Lee Welch as a person of interest in their abduction. That led police to this patch of land, which once belonged to the Welch family. Sources say investigators believe the girls are buried here.
Showed me a lot of things that a father would do with a son.
There's been people missing in this mountain way before those girls.
What happens on a mountain stays on a mountain.
I know I'm going to hell.
The Appalachian mountain range has a rumored history of poverty-stricken inbred families. While inbreeding in the Appalachian Mountains is no longer considered to be no more abundant than anywhere else in America, the Welch family was that exception. The Welch family originally lived on Taylor Mountain in Thaxton, Virginia. They were suspicious of outsiders, kept to themselves, and had one branch on their family tree. It was well known that some adults in the Welch family exploited their offspring and ignored barriers to incest. It was not uncommon for Welch children to experiment with siblings and cousins. When two sisters disappeared in 1975, eventually their deaths would be linked back to the Welch family on Taylor Mountain, and the claims that were made were truly disturbing. Hello, my name is Holly. Welcome to the Murder She Shed, the place we discuss rarely told true crime right from my she shed. Make sure you smash that subscribe button in order to find me in this big YouTube world. A Southern girl could get lost in here, and I often do. So you better push it while you found me, because I'll be gone again in no time. Sheila Mary Lyon and Catherine Mary Lyon were close as sisters could possibly be. The sisters were born 2 years apart to parents John and Mary Lyon in Kensington, Maryland, and they had two brothers. In 1975, the oldest sister Sheila was 12 years old, and the youngest Kate was 10. Both girls were honor roll students, smart as a whip and obedient. Sheila was the dreamy one, quieter and more of a homebody. She was in junior high at Newport School and was excited about trying to make it on the cheerleading squad that year. She had started to help her mother cook, had begun wearing eyeshadow, and had recently taken her first babysitting job. She was growing up. She was becoming a teenager, and she had her whole life ahead of her. Her younger sister Kate was the outgoing, athletic, silly one. She was a 5th grader at Oakland Terrace Elementary School. She was excited because for her birthday, her mother had just gave her permission to get her ears pierced like Sheila's. Kate's birthday was just 4 days away, and Sheila's was the day after Kate's, and their family planned on taking them onto a big birthday dinner together, and they were so excited. And it happened to be spring break, which was even more exciting for the girls. On March 25th, 1975 is a warm and muggy day. And like I said, the girls were out for spring break. So they wanted to go to the mall. Their dad, John, who was a popular radio personality, had worked the night shift and was sleeping when the girls decided to walk to the mall. They had left around lunch with about $2 between them, complaining that the cost of a pizza slice at the Orange Bowl had recently gone up 5 cents. The girls were told to be home by 4 p.m. and walk because the mall was only about a half a mile from their house. Their mother, Mary, then went to a bowling alley with friends. By 5:45, Mary had begun preparing the family's evening meal of fried chicken. She later recollected feeling slightly annoyed her daughters had not returned home by this time. This annoyance rapidly developed into panic, and by 7 p.m., police were notified of the girls' disappearance. The police quickly decided the girls did not run away from home. They had a great home life and seemed to have no reason to leave. Less than an hour after arriving at the mall, the girls were seen by an eyewitness talking to a middle-aged man. The man was carrying a briefcase with a tape recorder inside it. According to the witness, other children went up to that same man and were seen talking into that microphone. A poster was drawn up of what that man had looked like. There was also a witness that had seen the girls talking to a younger man who was not the tape recorder man. And a sketch was drawn up of this man. He had a little mustache and long hair, just a younger guy. Their older brother had seen them eating lunch by themselves, and they had seemed perfectly fine. Between 2:30 p.m. and 3 p.m., a friend of the sisters stated they saw the girls walking westward towards their home. This would have been the most direct route actually back to their home. And that was the last confirmed sighting of both girls. Police did a door-to-door canvass in the area and distributed posters with the girls' pictures and information. Police also utilized 2 specially trained track dogs from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The dogs both picked up the scents of the girls near the Wheaton Plaza, and they followed it all the way to where the trail stopped at a small gully-type stream. Hundreds of police officers and volunteers searched woods, ponds, sewers, and vacant lots. Psychics sent reporters on a wild goose chase for the girls' remains. Depraved opportunists phoned the girls' parents to demand a ransom, then would hang up when the father insisted on talking to the girls. A few days after the girls' disappearance, a greasy-headed 18-year-old boy showed up at the mall and told a security guard that he had actually witnessed the girls' disappearance. The mall cop immediately called the police. The boy, Lloyd Lee Welch, had been stoned during his police interview. Lloyd told police him and his wife, Helen, had been at the mall that day and had seen the tape recorder man talking to the sisters. Lloyd said he later saw both girls leaving the mall with the man and had seen them again outside as they drove off. He said the girls had gotten into the back of the man's red Camaro. He added that the tape recorder man walked with a limp. Lloyd said he was willing to take a lie detector test. After flunking the test, he admitted that he had made everything up about the car and about seeing the tape recorder man with the girls. Everything. And he had stated that he had actually learned all the information on this case from the media. The 6-page typed transcript of the interview went into a ring binder with all the stray bits and was not looked at again until 38 years later when a suspect emerged. This suspect, Ray Molesky, was not a new suspect to the case, but police had a renewed interest into looking at him as a suspect in 2011. In 1975, Molesky had inserted himself into the investigation of the LYON case. He had called the Montgomery County Police twice, first with the suggestion they should offer immunity to the person who actually kidnapped the girls if he returned them. And then, 2 weeks after the girls vanished, he had a tip. He said he had seen the widely publicized suspect, the gray-haired man with the tape recorder, weeks before the LYON sisters disappeared, trying to lure children into his car at another mall. He gave the police a detailed account. Then 2 years later, Molesky shot and killed his wife and one of his sons. In prison for those crimes, he had talked a lot about the LYON sisters, telling other inmates that he knew where the girls were buried. Police investigated these claims in 1982, partially even digging up his backyard and basement. They found nothing, so they abandoned the idea of him being suspect until 2011 when they learned that Molesky was picking up young girls and boys for Molesky would attend parties where men would share young victims. It really caught their attention after reading the police interview with Lloyd Welch and seeing where Lloyd said the suspect had walked with a limp. Lo and behold, Molesky walked with a limp. So they decided it's time to go back and re-interview Lloyd. The cops on the case did a little internet sleuthing in order to find Lloyd, and they learned he was currently in prison and had a pretty disturbing history of crimes with children himself. After finding a prison photo of Lloyd when he was young, they suddenly realized it looked very similar to the police sketch that was drawn up in 1975. The police were now thinking he may have worked with Molesky in order to lure the girls to their death. Lloyd was a carnival worker who traveled with the carnival in 1975, and he would hook up with women who had little girls so he could essay their daughters. At 40, he was finally caught essaying his girlfriend's 9-year-old little girl and received 33 years in prison. During the interview, Lloyd pointed to Molesky's prison photo and said, "That is the man who took the girls," but he denied a link between himself and Molesky. When asked, what do you think Molesky did to those girls, he answered, well, my opinion is that he killed them, and he probably burned them. This is the first time anything was brought up about the girls possibly being burned.
Picture taken back from that time period, if that guy means anything to you.
That's the guy right there.
What do you think he did to the girls?
Personally?
Yeah, I'm asking an opinion.
Well, my opinion is that he killed him. He killed him, probably burned him, I don't know.
Molesky died in prison in 2006, so authorities would have been unable to ask him any questions. LLOYD then took another polygraph, and guess what? He failed again. In his second interview with investigators, LLOYD acknowledged observing the girls leaving the shopping center. He stated this time he had known Molesky, and that the children had been taken to Molesky's home, where they had been drugged up, molested, and murdered by Molesky and two other individuals. But he claimed not to know who those two other individuals were in this interview. LLOYD claimed that he had observed these events, but it was through the window of a basement door, and that upon hearing one of the children scream, he had fled from the premises. LLOYD stated he had been in Molesky's vehicle when the girls were abducted and taken to Molesky's home. He now was implicating himself in the kidnapping. It wouldn't be long until LLOYD changed his story again, and this time he would include members of his own family as being responsible for the girls' death, and leave Molesky completely out of the story. LLOYD had a rough life. When LLOYD was just 2 years old, his father, Lee Welch, drove drunk and killed his mother. His father was convicted of manslaughter and sent to prison. LLOYD was passed from one foster home to another until he was 7. At that time, his father was released from prison and arrived to pick up LLOYD with a new woman on his arm. LLOYD's father was mean to him and always told LLOYD he hated him because he looked just like his mother. He began essaying the young boy and beating him. LLOYD began drinking at a very early age, and when he was a young teenager, he started using drugs. LLOYD had a large extended family, and in that family, it did not matter if you were a relative or what age you were when it came to sex. Several men in the Welch family were predators. LLOYD was able to escape his family when he was 16 by running away. Soon after, in 1973, LLOYD met what he says is the love of his life, Helen. He said him and Helen had been job hunting that day in the mall, and he actually saw his cousin Teddy abduct the girls. The only problem is his cousin Teddy had been only 11 when the girls were abducted. Teddy had a rough life too. Since he was a Welch, he was also essayed at a young age. When he was still a boy, his mother sold Teddy to older men for the price of some tile and carpet for her house. When the man began abusing Teddy, it just seemed quite normal to him since he came from such a disturbing family.
LLOYD was somebody that my father told me to stay away from. He was trouble. Tell you what, you give me 5 minutes with him in a room by himself, and I guarantee you he'll tell you anything you want to know. Because I beat the holy out of him for even bringing me into a situation like this. My full name is Thomas Teddy Welch Jr. LLOYD Lee Welch is a cousin. LLOYD, he's about 6 years older than I am.
My father was an alcoholic, a child abuser, and he used to beat me up.
Can you kind of give me just a little bit of backstory? What was the situation with your parents?
I was placed in a boys' home at an early age.
I wasn't even raised around most of these people for most of my life. I was raised in other places. I'll talk about this a little bit. I lived a homosexual relationship as a juvenile from the age of about 15 until I was about my early 20s. I had a lover. I was an older gentleman.
Leonard Kreisel, a wealthy, middle-aged child predator.
He was an older gentleman, very, very wealthy. And I had the opportunity to travel all over the world and see many, many things that many people would never be able to see. I touched Jesus' tomb with my hand. Sound like a pretty good deal.
You were 15 years old. That really, I mean, the law doesn't recognize that as a choice.
Well, the law doesn't recognize a whole lot of I wanted a mentor, I wanted a father. He's probably the closest thing I ever had to a father. He taught me a lot of stuff, a lot of things that a father would do with a son.
And his wife and his boys were living in a house that Leonard Kreisel had bought for them. Teddy was working in a business that Leonard owned.
Lenny, whenever he came, he had a room in the house that was his room. I never had any reason to be suspicious that he was doing anything with my children.
We wound up getting the story from the children. Both boys were 10 at the time, twin boys. The accusation was that Leonard Kreisel would come into their rooms in front of them, ask them to perform on them.
I always thought that he looked at those children like the grandchildren that he's never going to have. And then he treated them like that.
Yeah, but you were the son he never had.
Teddy's own story was so remarkable and suggestive to the detectives. More and more, it made sense to them that someone like Teddy would have been perfect to lure two little girls from the mall into the arms of an older predator.
The Welch clan had two branches, one in Hyattsville, Maryland, and the other 5 hours south on a secluded hilltop in Thaxton, Virginia, a place the locals called Taylor's Mountain. Taylor's Mountain and Hyattsville may have been radically different places, but the family was the same in both. Fathers beat and raped their children, brothers terrorized and raped their sisters and cousins. Alcohol, drugs, and violence colored every relationship in the Welch family. The family hid all this. Its business was no one else's. Criminal behavior rarely warranted family censor, much less a report to the police. Indeed, the more shocking the conduct, the stronger the impulse to hide it. Protecting the family from the outsiders was more important than protecting its members, including children, from each other. In Virginia, the rule was, what happens on Taylor's Mountain stays on Taylor's Mountain. In another police interview, Lloyd admitted his uncle Richard Welch Sr. helped Teddy in the abduction. He had been the driver. Richard, or Uncle Dick as he was called in the Welch family, was also a predator. He had molested his wife's sister when she was only 9. The sister said Dick, who was then in his 20s, had pulled off her pants and underwear, draped her leg over the back of a couch, and performed OS. Dick had also been a mall security guard during the time the girls were abducted. The authorities wondered if he had used this as a ruse to lure the girls to him. Lloyd said after abducting the girls, Teddy, him, and Uncle Dick drove back to Dick's house and took the girls into the basement. Lloyd could describe every detail of the basement. Lloyd said the girls were drugged and both Uncle Dick and Teddy were essaying them, but stated he didn't do anything. He was perfectly innocent of all that.
He's now over 70 years old and a person of interest in this unsolved case.
Police have searched Richard's Hyattsville home at least twice.
And authorities strongly believe there are others out there who know what happened.
To feel that they'd stumbled on a hive of predators.
My sense from the minute we got to Taylor Mountain was, oh my God, this would be the place that you would hide something. I kind of likened it to the hills have eyes.
The break in the case came when Dick's sister's daughter, Connie, admitted in the spring of 1975 Lloyd and Helen showed up unannounced to her home at Taylor Mountain. Lloyd had a duffel bag containing bloody clothing. Connor said Lloyd told her that he had been carrying ground beef in the bag, which had gone bad and caused his clothing to become bloody. And she did see the blood on the duffel bag. Her brother, Henry Parker, told detectives that Lloyd had 2 green Army-style duffel bags that each weighed between 60 and 70 pounds with reddish-brown stains and the odor of decomp. Henry assisted his cousin Lloyd in throwing the duffel bags into a fire on the Taylor Mountain property. Henry had been told it was a dead dog. Neighbors would later say that spring in 1975 they recalled the odor of burnt flesh in a fire that lasted several days. Authorities began digging on the mountain in 2014, trying to recover the girls' remains. They did recover a tooth, bone fragments, a small bit of clothing, and a piece of metal that could have been part of SHEILA's glasses. No DNA was ever recovered off of any of these items. And to top it off, Teddy was able to prove that he had broken both of his arms that spring and had both arms in a cast. And when police told Lloyd there was no way Teddy could have abducted SHEILA and Kate, he would quickly drop Teddy from the story. This time his story changed to include his own father, Lee Welch Sr. And this would lead detectives to the house that his father used to live in. And in that house was a dark basement. in the actual description Lloyd had described it to be in, only he said it is in Uncle Dick's home. The officers traveled to Lee Welch Sr.'s old house and discovered you could only get to the basement from the back of the house. The detective walked around to the backyard and then down the back steps. The old padlock on the door was not secure. He jiggled the latch and it opened easily. He stepped into a dark, low-ceilinged stone dungeon, gloomy, dirty, and stale-smelling, heaped with old furniture. It was so hauntingly familiar it raised the fine hairs on the back of his neck. This was the place. He knew it. The detective returned the next day with a forensic team. They cleared away some of the old furniture and started testing for traces of blood. Squirting blue star spray, the floors and walls of the outer room revealed nothing much, just a few blood spots here and there, what you might find in a room used as a workspace. Then they cleared debris from the back room and sprayed some more. It lit up from floor to ceiling. It lit up like a murder scene. Someone or something had been slaughtered in this room, and the assumption was that it was SHEILA and Kate. When Lloyd was told about the blood, he told his final story. Lloyd repeated that his Uncle Dick had approached him, asking for help in picking up 2 girls to party with. Then he said the real reason was to make movies. He was into and he wanted to make movies to make money. Lloyd said he had lured the girls himself by offering them pot, and the older one, SHEILA, had dragged her little sister along. SHEILA climbed into the front seat of the car between Dick and Lee. Kate got in the back with Lloyd. Dick was in his security guard uniform and was driving his wife's station wagon. Dick gave SHEILA a joint, he said, and when she tried it, she began coughing. They drove around for about a half an hour with Kate sniffling in the back seat and Dick and Lee arguing in the front about what to do next. They eventually drove to Dick's house and Lloyd said he left. When he returned the next day and saw his uncle, one of the girls, he now said his father was there too, filming it with Dick's camera. Lloyd suggested that for filming, the girls were then shuttled between Lee's basement and Dick's house where the decor was better. This lasted for about a week. Lloyd left and stayed at his father's house for several days, he said. During that time, he said he did not know where the girls were. He and Helen were offered money and pot to watch the girls at Dick's house on Easter Sunday, while the Welch family gathered at Lee's. They found the girls drugged and in the upstairs pool room. Lloyd now said that Helen had stayed with the girls while he watched TV downstairs. He said that the girls were then drove back to Lee's basement, and then Dick took an axe down to the basement where the girls were. He stated that possibly the youngest Kate was causing trouble because his dad, Lee, broke her neck, and he then saw his uncle cut her up with an axe. As they were doing it, Dickie started stuffing body parts into the duffel bag, and Lee started cleaning up the blood. Lloyd gave even more gruesome details, how Kate was flat on her back on the basement floor when Lee straddled her and leaned down and snapped her little neck. How Dick started chopping and could not reach all the way up with the axe because the ceiling was just too low. How he started hacking at one knee and ultimately chopped her into 4 or 5 pieces. He said his dad and uncle told him to take the bags and dump it on the fire pit on Taylor Mountain.
Okay. Yeah, I was in the basement. I seen what happened like that. I was threatened, multiple threats, that I could be cut up too if I didn't help do what he wanted me to do. Lee and Dick did do the cutting. I helped clean up a little bit, not a lot, because it made me sick to my stomach. They took the bag and put it in the car and told me to take it down to Virginia, and Henry would be down there waiting with a fire.
Most of my family knows this story.
Lee, but he's dead. I guess Henry knows it. I didn't know Connie knew. And I'm 99.9 sure that Patty knows. Dick's wife.
Just out of curiosity, why did you bring Teddy into the mall scenario way back when?
Scapegoat.
On September 12, 2017, in a Bedford courtroom, Lloyd Welch pled guilty to 2 counts of felony murder. He said he had participated in the kidnapping of Sheila and Kate Lyon more than 40 years earlier, but he continued to deny that he had. The traces of hemoglobin in the basement of 4714 Baltimore Avenue were too degraded to provide even a blood type, much less a DNA match. The detective's theory is although Kate was cut up and taken to Taylor Mountain in a bag, Sheila was brought there alive and was further abused. They believe Sheila's body may one day be found on Taylor Mountain. This mountain still holds many secrets, and we may never know the true story of what happened to Sheila and Kate Lyon on that mountain. Lloyd was sentenced to 2 concurrent terms of 48 years imprisonment, and no one else has been officially implemented in the crimes. What we do know is those little girls were abused and tortured to death on that mountain, all because of the evil that lived there. How many members of the Welch family are guilty, we will never know. A lot of them are dead, have passed away, and the ones that aren't still hold secrets to this day, so we may never know. May you rest in peace, Sheila and Kate Lyon, and I hope one day they do find your body on top of Taylor Mountain. All right, I love each and every one of you guys. I want to tell you to have a great weekend. I was at my mom's the first part of this week, so it's taken me a while to get a new video out. Before I leave, I want to tell you about why don't you ever come to the other side where you can fit? He can't fit through this small hole here, and he won't go around. But anyway, before I leave, I want to tell you about my other channel, Strange She Shed. It has nothing to do with true crime. In fact, it's extremely strange. Hopefully you'll find me and hit that subscribe button. I can leave a link in the comments, but it's nothing to do with true crime. It's just me being goofy and Simon being goofy. And that's what we do best.
This is Cricket, my daughter-in-law's dog. I've been babysitting. Say hi, Cricket. Simon tolerates her. He's a little jealous. Little jealous, aren't you? She's got all these big dogs to be around. Buddy's back in the back, behind the couch. I got dog hair all over me. That's the life.